but you get the point. And then they introduced a little bit of 3D with some pre-rendered sprites and a 60 frames per second frame rate, although it is a smaller screen. The text in there talks about who made it and whatnot. So this was made by a French group, and some of them are still around. They actually run the Free Tools Association, I forget if it's .com or .net website, and they have all their demos, which are emulatable. Sorry, there's actually some 3D stuff here. Let me just see if I can find it. They make you wait. And that was it. That was kind of the most impressive thing of the day. This might be running a little bit choppy because it's on emulation. So all of that really got us got myself and my buddy into the demo and coding, and everybody wanted to create the next Nucleus. And in the demo scene on the GS, I was the mercenary, my friend was Joe Hack, and we were in Dreamworld Society. And one of the demos we put out actually ended up leading to a commercial product. So we made a 3200 color viewer, which was really a ripoff on the Amiga. It basically, every scan line, you changed the palette. So you had a new set of 16 colors for every scan line. And so the way you get 3200 colors is you take 16 colors per scan line times the 200 scan lines, 3200 color pictures. So what we put out was just a little demo. We talked about a product that didn't exist, but a way to edit them. I mean, it was a really kind of lame editor to edit these pictures, kind of really brute force-ish. But in the end, we got so much response that we ended up making this paint program. And the paint program allowed you to edit in 3200 colors, real time. And some of the stuff that it did was you could move around the buttons. The buttons were loadable. So it had a couple cool features, but it was really a cross between Deluxe Paint 2 and Paintworks Gold at the time. And then that led into writing my last year in college. I wrote a double Tetris game. It was based on a PC version. The Apple II GS had really no software support, so at that time it was just like, well, everyone wants to make a game. We did the paint program first, and then I made a shareware game later. So kind of moving forward beyond that, then after college, I went to program games at a little developer on the Super Nintendo. So the Super Nintendo used the same microprocessor, that 65816. It was about the same speed, too. What at the time, a lot of people were porting from the 68000 couldn't make fast Super Nintendo games. So that's where the experience with the processor helped us write better code and ultimately create better games on the Super Nintendo. In '95, I left with a couple other guys to form our own company called Tiburon Entertainment in Orlando, Florida. And we were acquired by EA in 1998. And then since then, we've just kind of been growing the company and building more and more products. So that's sort of the brief history, and that might have felt long. But kind of moving into the presentation, so here's kind of what we're going to talk about. Talking about a little bit about the game industry, a little about EA in general, and then really get into some of the new challenges facing the industry, the techniques, and all those types of things that are changing as we move forward with new technology, and I'll end with a couple thoughts. So for those of you who are probably over 30, not a lot of you, but you might remember this ad. This was an ad from EA early in the 80s, and it was called The Artist. So the basic concept was to promote software developers and game makers like they're rock stars. And it was no coincidence that the packaging for the games looked like a record package. There was another variation of this ad that said, "We see further," and it talked about the artists, Bill Budge, Dan Buttons, and the other guys listed in the picture. So that was a start, and the title on this ad at the time was, Can a Computer Make You Cry? And we'll come back to that in a little bit. Just talking about the video game business in general. So I couldn't find, Europe's a little hard because of all the segmented countries, so I don't have real good European numbers, but these will be the US numbers. But what's key here is it's a $27 billion business worldwide, so it's a huge business. In the US alone, the video game software sales has surpassed the box office movie receipts. So you can tell relative size, and we're starting to catch up with the record business. And then 60% of Americans are playing video games. And if you start to think about that, well, probably at above 40, you may or may not be using computers, may not. So as I guess as my generation ages, there will be a whole span from 0 to 60, well, not 0, maybe 3 to 60, who have played video games in some way, shape, or form and aren't afraid of them. And then just another point on that, a lot of people think that video games are for kids. The average age, at least in the U.S., is 28. It is predominantly male-dominated, but there is definitely a different range of players. So just a common myth that I wanted to dispel. Now moving on to Electronic Arts. Electronic Arts is the largest publisher of software in the world. We did a little bit over $3.1 billion last year, which translates into a lot of video games. So EA's only business is making video games. We sell packaged goods. That's really about it. There's no movies, there's no TV. It's just software and video games. We are very much a worldwide company. More than 50% of our revenue came from outside of the U.S., and we have direct distribution to all the different territories, including Finland. But he's not here today. I think he's on vacation, our guy from the Finland office. Then just kind of drilling into a couple of the brands, the EA Games covers our movie licenses. It covers our wholly owned properties like The Sims and the 007, all those types of games. We have EA Sports, probably best known in these areas for FIFA, NHL, certainly Madden, which we make, U.S. territory. But all the sports titles fall under that, and the tagline is, "It's in the game." Now, who makes all this software? So all this software gets built in the EA Studios. And the one way to think about the EA Studios is there's 5 kind of major locations: Vancouver, the UK, Europe area, San Francisco, LA, and Orlando. And then we have kind of developing studios. So in Chicago, Japan, and Montreal, we have smaller groups that we're trying to build into larger studios. And then really just hitting EA Vancouver. So EA Canada is the largest of our studios. There are actually 2 facilities in Vancouver, one downtown and one in Burnaby. We build titles like Need for Speed, FIFA, NBA Live, NHL, SSX, all of those titles. And then the UK. So the UK studio, this is the Chertsey building where they build Harry Potter. Recently there was an acquisition of Criterion, I think it was last year, and that includes Burnout and Black. And then Sweden, so the DICE was probably the most recent acquisition, and they built Battlefield 1942. Oops, wrong way. And then lastly, in Florida, this is my home office. We have about 550 people that are pretty much purely making video games. We build Madden football, NCAA football, NASCAR. We have a title in development which will ship with a movie called Superman. So Superman Returns, it'll be our first action-adventure title. So that's sort of EA in a nutshell. Then as we start to look forward for the video game industry, so there's multiple platforms coming out. I'm sure some of you have read about them if you track the video game industry at all, and how this might apply. So I was speaking with Dirk earlier about his procedural textures and how they might apply on a Nintendo DS where you have a limited cartridge size, a limited memory space, and same thing with the PSP. So these are, the 4K demo guys will have plenty of room here, but all their techniques and a lot of the stuff that's being written can apply, whether it's the procedural, the sound, music generation, things like that, all really apply well to very, very directly to a handheld. Then you have the kind of the bigger consoles. So this is the Xbox 360 from Microsoft, shipping sometime, I think it's like November of this year, and we're actively working on many next-gen titles for it. So we're building Madden. I'll show you some pictures from that in a minute, but the specs are here, multiple processors, a lot of memory, a pretty cool custom ATI chip, and then high def. And you'll see as we get to the PS3, which is going to be in 2006, very similar types of things are coming up. It's the multiple processors. It's the very high-end video graphics chip. It's the high-definition graphics, which will start to rival the PC specs and visuals in terms of quality. So we're getting away from the NTSC, the 640 by 480 that feels pretty low res after time. And then the one other thing that the PS3 has is this Blu-ray, which is that new kind of high-def DVD format. So then as you start looking at Xbox 360, and these are a couple, I'll preface this with, these are a couple months old. These are about 3 months old. We're actually should be looking better than this. But what you can start to see here is we're playing with definitely more polys. We're starting to play with a lot more shaders. We're doing normal mapping in the jerseys. We're doing HDR lighting in the stadium. We have occlusion mapping in the. I don't have a good shot here, but there's occlusion mapping for the stairs and different things like that. So you start to play with a lot more high-end rendering techniques, graphics techniques, lighting techniques, start achieving what we believe will be the most kind of photorealistic look we've ever seen. I kind of hit this again. So, we're doing some self-shadowing, new lighting techniques. One of the big pieces here, and this is probably one of the hardest things to get used to, and when you make the jump from kind of coding demos to, or any kind of coding, on your own or even in school, to the video game industry, is these things are huge productions. So, we have 120 people on Madden Xbox 360, and there's a lot more cross-function all of a sudden. So all of a sudden, you know what? An artist can't really make a shader anymore. You need a guy who has some kind of technical ability and some artistic ability to create shaders. So you have a whole new breed of people, what are called technical artists, more technical directors. There's a lot more collaboration between the disciplines to get to the great visuals. And lastly, then, that kind of gets back to the question of, can a computer make you cry? So can we get to the point where, this computer can generate enough emotion in people to, make you cry? So movies have been doing it, and they spend all their time and focus against, how do we drive emotion or a feeling, whether it's you made the shot and you won the game, or, it's a sad story, somebody died, and you want the audience crying when they leave. As we start to develop and get to kind of mature technologies, we have to kind of create that same level of emotion. So right now, a certain amount of the emotion from a game playing standpoint is pretty immature. It's about, the rewards. As you pick up an item and it's +7 instead of +5, and you're like, woo, I'm good. You're gaining levels. It's sort of like this. It's just a reward system that is not tied around emotion or, it's just about getting something. And I think when we start to cross that next level and you start talking about the female gamers and things like that, we need to hit emotion and really nail that. And then lastly, I told you this was going to be short. Man, I went too fast. Sorry. Lastly, so I think in overall, I've been amazed by the demos. So overall, the 4K, the 64K, all this stuff has been really, really cool stuff. I classify a lot of these demo coders in the top, 2 or 3% of the all coders within the world, I think, because, we have some really good coders, but there's very few. And some of the techniques that I see, certainly translate at that high level. And I think the procedural stuff, the compression, all these things apply in some way, shape, or form. It's just a matter of kind of getting your hands on the hardware. And as I start to look forward, these are the people that right now are the ones we're trying to recruit, because these are the great people who would become the great next leaders within EA. So, my history is sort of similar. It's games, coding, technology. I just didn't get to come to assembly because I lived in Iowa. So all those things apply very directly. We become all of our leaders right now, a bunch of them, myself, the general manager of EA Canada, Don Matrick, the president of Worldwide Studios, all came from a game coding background. And those are the types of possibilities we have at EA, and everything that, great coding is rewarded at EA. And that's really kind of all I had. We're going to do questions, and then I have one quiz for all you guys who could do code. And the prize is this T-shirt. Oops, wrong way. Wrong way. What does it say? One of you guys will get it, and we'll take questions. I don't have a semicolon. Oh, am I missing a... Oh, I typed it. Oh, you're right. Good one. I got to fix that. How's that? Oh, all right, and I'll take questions. This is the shirt. You're going to win it. And we have two other shirts we're giving out for questions. So Lassie tells me people are very shy. And to help encourage questions, we're going to give out a couple shirts. However you get to it, that's fine. I understand ASCII is a little bit outdated anymore, so. Was which one? Shenmue, right? No, I'm. I think there's been a lot of kind of those more movie-based type games, and in the past they've been kind of frowned upon with gamers because it's not interactive, you know. And I mean, when you think about Metal Gear Solid 2, I mean, the big joke is it's a lot of cutscenes, 5 minutes of gameplay, and back to cutscenes, right? So I think the trick is really blending the interactive with that emotion. So it's when you do something that triggers that emotional response from you because of something you see on the screen. And as far as I know, I don't know of anything that really hits that. We got a shirt for him? What size do you wear? We'll get it to you after the show. You look like a medium. More questions? I took off the answers. Now hiring. There it is. Oops, there's a shirt. Sorry. More questions? Is it useful? In the back? Piracy is a big problem. So right now what we're looking at in Asia is more online. So when you think about like World of Warcraft, massively multiplayer requires an online connection. Those are some of the things that we're looking at heavily in Asia. The Steam stuff is sort of interesting from Valve, from a digital kind of distribution mechanism. I think we're still exploring that. But I think right now the quick solution is requiring an online connection. So all packaged goods stuff seems to get pirated. Huh? Oh. Sorry, say it again. No. So I think I owe this guy's shirt too. Right in the back in the green. So actually, my background is strictly code. So I've learned everything I've learned at EA in terms of leadership, management, marketing, all of that stuff has all been acquired since being part of EA. Yeah, we have a program called EA University, which is we have dedicated programming, software trainers, art trainers, and then design trainers. And we have kind of a series of foundation courses and then other things moving forward. And then obviously, when you're immersed in the work, you're learning from everybody around you, and you have to learn fairly quickly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't coded in 5 years, so the last thing I think I worked on was Madden 2000, and that was more in the bug-fixing phases. I think I might have done some of the play call screen. You miss it. And that was a conscious choice I made, so I could have stayed in programming, decided to try to branch out and do other things. I've been meaning to get back into like either Palm, like little Palm Pilot coding, or maybe some HTML or Flash, just to kind of do it. But the time thing has not allowed it. It depends on your personality. If you want to affect more, you take a step back and say, I'm not going to code, but I'm going to help direct more people to get to that final vision or final place. A lot of market research one. We have tournaments. So for Madden, we have the Madden Challenge, which we go to 32 NFL cities. It's sort of like the World Cyber Gaming League, but we go to 32 NFL cities. People sign up, they play. We monitor community sites, so that's a big place of feedback. But in the end, we're about is making great games, and ultimately, great games are defined by the consumers. So if we make a game that doesn't hit, all it means is we were totally off base and we wasted, a year or two making a game that nobody wanted. So we really try to be in front of that and really try to, I think Need for Speed Underground is a good example of a game that starts to hit something that people want and combines it with racing. Oh, sorry. Okay. I see. Well, so surveying through the web, right? So we also do focus groups where we bring in, random people in the demographic. They look at the concepts, whether they're white papers or maybe a video. We get their feedback. Then the other thing is once we started a product, we do what we call play testing. So the best thing you can do from an interactive standpoint is take this game, and if you say, hey, I want people to be able to finish the first level in 15 minutes, you take this game, you put it in front of them, and you watch people play, and can they finish that first level in 15 minutes? So from a design standpoint, you set your target, you set your goals, and then you watch people. And if they can't do it, then you've made something too hard, something's not intuitive. You have to kind of continually adjust. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Hmm. So that's a great question. Maybe I should repeat the question so people can hear. The question is about innovation and how is EA going to make more games that innovate like the Rez of the world or the Lionhead games? The answer is yes. When you see the games like the Spores from Will Wright, that thing is incredible. You start as a protoplasm, you get a horn, then you can eat, and you kind of grow when you evolve your character. It's this very, very cool, a totally different type of game. I think Sims fell in that category, but as a percentage of our portfolio, it's certainly smaller. But there's multiple game developments. One of them in Montreal, which is a new gameplay mechanic around. I can't talk about that one, but but it's a new type of game, and it's based on our own kind of property. So it happens throughout the 4,000 people. Absolutely. The hardest part is, yeah. We we have a lot of ideas, and ultimately we have to just kind of prioritize because you only have so many people who can make these games, even though we have a lot of people. Do you have a question? So the question's about platform developers and how do you determine what games you make and don't make. Really, with a lot of the stuff from EA, we've kind of achieved this critical mass where, it's pretty much a pretty straightforward conversation. It's, hey, we want to do this on this platform. That's pretty straightforward. I know that depending on the company, you have to kind of submit your ideas, kind of get approval, and then it goes to the next step. Certainly on our part, the hardest part is the internal, gauntlet to get approval. And once we do that, the platform stuff is pretty straightforward. But we have tight relationships with Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft, and they work pretty much hand in hand in trying to help us get, the best software on their platform as possible. Yeah. EA Japan. Jobs.ea.com is probably the best way. That has the kind of the complete listing. You can drill by studio. Jobs.ea, and then we have a couple people here you can talk to as well, and they can maybe bypass some of the web and the intranets and all the other process in there, but they can help get that started sooner. But we do have studios around the world. In the mobile. So we do have an initiative on mobile. We are going to be releasing, I think it's about 16 titles over the next fiscal year. And I spent some time with a few developers in Finland, Frozen Byte, Bugbear, House Marquee, and I'm trying to catch up with Mr. Good Living and then the Remedy guys. But there is, I think there's definitely some work here that, is excellent, and we can work with some of these companies to develop other titles. But we do have a pretty big initiative going on right now around mobile. I think you'll see 16 or so titles in the next fiscal year. But we're kind of going slow. I have not seen the game competition yet. I like them. So I think there's some really cool. The question is about game development competition. So I think anything that we can do as as people and in terms of interactive gaming and learning about games, and the more we dig, the better off we're going to be. In a lot of ways, it's sort of like the independent films. You're going to get some things that are totally new and revolutionary that will, light the world on fire. Well, I mean, think about Katamari Damacy, the Namco game where you roll around and pick up stuff and get bigger. I mean, totally weird game concept, very innovative and very cool, fun to play. So hopefully you see more of those types of things come out. I think Devil Dice on the PSX also was another one of the independent games. It was when the Uralzi cable came out, that black cable allowed you to develop for the PlayStation from your PC. And that was one of the independent games that ended up getting published by Sony and won some game competition. How much time? I spend the time that I don't have. So I start about midnight, and I play till about 2 to 3, and sometimes 4, but hopefully, it's got to scale that in, because I have to go take the kids to school in the morning, and that makes it very, very difficult. But it's a very, very good game, accessible, pretty easy to play and get into, and then it's just fun doing the quests and the instances. Question? Yeah, that one's hard. I think the answer is, games are a bit subjective, and I don't know that we've gotten the formula right every time. So the question is, how do you know when to kill a game? There's an easy one when the execution isn't going well. So if they're supposed to be at this date, they're not making their milestones, the game doesn't look good, then you kind of start to get sour on the idea, and then you say, let's just call it. That's kind of the easier one. The question is when it's a game that is, like say Madden, and just pretend it was running late, when do you make that call on what do you do with it? Definitely new properties. So, within EA, The Sims was almost killed multiple times. And, as a game player not interested in humans and relationships, I was thinking, well, I've got a pretty boring life already. Why do I need another one? And the question is, well, why? How is this a fun game, right? I mean, but little do I know, for kids and kids that are younger, it's like the new dollhouse, right? I mean, it's more complicated than any dollhouse you can ever have, and it has those interactions and those relationships that you can get into, So that didn't appeal to me, but, and within, EA, there was many points where it was like, maybe we should pull the plug. So it's, you could be wrong and you can be right, and there's no science. Did you have a question?
Yes. How do you deal with the, first of all, with the massive size of development teams that EA is having, and there's got to be a law of diminishing returns in action. And my understanding is that the largest teams are looking at something like 300 people on a single game. So where do you see that leading?
Right. So the question was, how do you deal with large team sizes? Some of them are peaking at almost 300. Heard that some are peaking at almost 300 people, and as they're diminishing returns. What we've been playing with is more of a pod structure. I don't have a diagram, but if you think of like a spoke and then a bunch of kind of satellite groups. So what we're doing is, as moving forward, is we look at like customer-facing features. So if we're talking about the living world, We have a small group of people working on the living world. They have ownership over the living world. They design it, they code it, they make the features, and try to build that living world as best as they can. So we're distributing the ownership so that, you know what, this group knows exactly what they need to do and makes it to the best of their ability. That's sort of the theoretical answer, and that's what we're doing. It's very hard, right? So it's very hard to communicate with a large group. It's very hard to get everybody on the same page. There are multiple challenges which we're working to solve. But I think that's also where procedural starts to come in. So when you think about the more we can, the Spore, the Will Write game, is about procedural animation, and the computer generates the algorithms to move and walk. So you can have a 5-legged creature, and it will walk, but that's procedurally generated, versus having animation for one leg jumping around, 2 legs, 3 legs, 4 legs, 5 legs, and then you can put them wherever you want. So there's multiple answers. Our goal though is to start trying to figure out how to keep our team sizes smaller, because I think they do become very inefficient and they become harder to run. And I think when I think about it, we want to get kind of more skilled people, but less of them. So you know what? Let's have a smaller team of 10 or 15 superstars and less kind of volume. Yeah, and the other piece of it is a pre-production process. So, the movie business has solved this years ago, and the reason, movies have always had this long pre-production cycle. They have a really strict pre-pro green light process and all that other stuff, because every day you spend on a set, when you have 200 or 300 people running around, it costs a lot of money. So you do all the pre-pro to minimize your shoot days. Well, in software development, we could be lazy. We can make changes at the end. We don't really have to design something out. We can just start going and then kind of iterate, and see where we end up. And we have the issue around bugs. So, the movie business doesn't have to deal with, they might have errors in their shots, but they can correct them digitally now, and a bunch of different techniques. So one of the big initiatives over the last 2 years within EA is in this pre-pro process. It's about getting to stuff you iterate while it's cheap, either on paper, prototypes, quick visual prototypes in Maya, things like that, and really understand what you're building before you go build it. And then you build to like a vertical slice of the game. So we have one level, a bunch of monsters, a bunch of the puzzles working, you play it, and then that kind of works back to your point about when do you kill it. So if it's fun at that point, then it's just kind of a volume game. You need to build 10 more levels, you need to build 15 more monsters, whatever that mix is. So those are some of the things. Mm-hmm. So is your question, how are we going to continue to innovate? So just on the iterative sports titles, how do we keep pushing the bar? So I think visually, next gen is going to be the easiest thing. I think everybody's going to get to great visuals because of faster pipelines, the nice shaders, and all that other stuff. I think that part's the easy part. I think the thing that separates it is innovation with the controller. It's innovation around realism, around faces and emotion. So if you start to feel connected to these players, that's the stuff that sets, kind of the old school where the faces were rigid. They were looking over here when the action was over here. You had all these kind of little visual flaws that kind of broke that illusion that this is real. But I think we're really experimenting with is the real-time physics. So physics in football make perfect sense, the tackles, all those types of things. And then as you start looking forward, it's emotion. And I think the graphics are kind of it's the lowest common denominator. I think everybody's going to be there, and we've got to get above that through the real-time emotion or the interaction. Am I involved with projects? Sports. Oh, do I play sports? So am I involved with sport? No. That's done out in the Bay Area. So Will's got a team of about 40 people, and he's trying to buck the trend of large teams. So he's trying to make this whole game with about 40 people and from start to finish. But it's a small team out in California, and they've hired in some people and stuff, but I'm not directly involved. So the way the studios work out is I have Madden, NCAA, NASCAR, Superman. I'm very involved with those products from kind of the design and where they're going, how they're tracking, and how they play, and things like that. And those are kind of my responsibility. Then somebody else has the different parts of the portfolio. Yes, we are hiring a lot of people. Oh, for sport? I think we can pass your resume, or we can pass resumes along, certainly. They are looking for kind of really creative technical artists, and it's because it's so procedural. It's like they're not looking for just direct artists. I don't know what you do, but they're looking for programmers really in technical art. Any questions over here? I've been ignoring you guys, and we're actually probably getting close to time. Any last questions? Yeah? Yeah. Right. So the question is just about the tool chain and the tools. We use GNU C for with the backend for the PS2, and we use Visual Studio for Xbox, the Microsoft tools. That's big shock. The Essence Systems builds the debuggers for PS2. They were just acquired by Sony. But beyond the development tools, really the next movement for EA is the data-driven tools. So letting the content creators create the levels, be able to get them into the game themselves, not involve the programmers. So the programmers build the robust code that supports the data. The content creators can go and iterate, prototype. Yeah, and we're trying to remove the programmers from that part of the work because the programmers should focus on the interaction or the AI or things like that. So EA acquired Criterion, which included Renderware, and Renderware is an example of some decent pipelines for getting data into game without really artist-enabled tools, I would call them. And that's sort of the platform moving forward, and we certainly want to move more towards that model. So the idea that, you can tune, and not involve, a programming team makes programmers happy, it makes artists happy, and level designers happy. Any last questions? Useful? All right. For the party? Oh, we're going to Boost Assembly, I think. Isn't that I think that's the plan. We're going to go hang out. Now that this is all said and done, we're going to try to hang out. And, yesterday, if I didn't have to do this presentation, I would have been hanging out with you guys playing Warcraft. That would have been fun. I'd probably have to start a new character. All right. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. And